Tonight we begin with breaking news. Former U.S. Senator and Democratic Vice Presidential nominee Joe Lieberman has passed away at the age of 82. He died from complications after a fall. His family said in a statement, "I'm Chris Steyerwalt. I'm filling in for Blake Berman. The Hill on NewsNation starts right now." Say hello to our panel today. You know Mick Mulvaney. He's the former Trump White House Chief of Staff, and he's a NewsNation contributor. Yay. Tiffany Smiley. She's a former Republican Senate candidate from the great state of Washington. How about Chris Hahn? He's a former senior aide to Senator Chuck Schumer. He is also a NewsNation contributor. And say hello to our friend Amisha Cross. She is a former Obama campaign advisor. Hello and welcome. We will have the latest on the Baltimore bridge collapse and the White House response. We will talk about many things today, but first some breaking news. The death of a major force in American politics. Joe Lieberman was known as a centrist, and most recently, he was a founding chairman of the independent No Labels political movement. He served in the Senate for 4 terms representing his native Connecticut, including one as an independent. Lieberman was Al Gore's running mate in the 2000 election. He was a strong supporter of the 2003 war in Iraq. Former Republican Senator John McCain, in fact, wanted Lieberman, a close friend of his, to be his running mate instead of Sarah Palin in 2008. But Republicans warned McCain against that, so Sarah from Wasilla was the answer instead. We have a lot more that we're going to talk about today. But I want to start with you, Mick. Joe Lieberman represented something very uniquely American. This is a guy who, if you'll let me nerd out for a second here. This was a guy who won his...
It's one of my favorite things to do is to let you nerd out.
It's how I roll.
That's right.
Joe Lieberman won his first term in the United States Senate, I think in 1980, because he beat Republican Lowell Weicker. And he beat Lowell Weicker because he got William F. Buckley Jr. and other conservatives who were mad at Weicker to back the Democrat in the race. So this is a guy throughout his entire career, through his entire life. He was dropped out of the Democratic Party, ran as an independent, all of that stuff, No Labels now. You have been part of the discussions at No Labels. Yeah. How does Joe Lieberman strike you?
He will be very sorely missed. He was a true gentleman. He really was. And he sort of embodied the No Labels sort of movement, sort of the attitude behind No Labels, which is, look, can't we all just get along? That there is some silent majority in the center of the country, that the left is going further left, the right is going further right, but aren't there some reasonable people left someplace in the center? And that doesn't even mean you have to be moderate in your politics as much as moderate in your attitude. And he was just a nice fella. Now, I'm a Southerner, and he talks slower than I do, which is really hard to do. Well, he does. He but he was a wonderful man to sort of hang out with. I had a beer with him one time at the Tombs in Georgetown, and it was a great experience. He will be sorely missed. So.
Yes, and he was a very kind, thoughtful human being. Chris Hahn. We're going to stick with the old dudes on this. Sorry, if you don't mind.
Amisha wasn't born when he got elected to the Senate
for a moment, but Joe Lieberman, the rejection of Joe Lieberman by the Democratic Party, right? So if we're looking at like the signal moments of political change that in hindsight we look back and we go, yeah. So when Joe Lieberman lost the Democratic primary in Connecticut in 2006, I believe it was. Ned Lamont, who would go on to become the governor of Connecticut, beat him. And then Lieberman said, and he was being punished for his support for the Iraq War, essentially, by the Democratic base. So Lieberman says, I'm running as an independent, and won. I look back at that, that's a sort of a watershed moment, a threshold moment.
Oh, absolutely. Look, it showed the power of the base in a primary, right? Your bases are always going to be the extremes of the party. People want to get out. They didn't want to forgive Lieberman for his vote, even though he'd done a lot of other great things in his career that liberals really enjoyed in Connecticut, and that was really unique to him, right? There was a time when he got in politics in 1980, became a senator, where you could actually get the support of the conservatives and be a Democrat. Just like Al D'Amato got the support from the Liberal Party in New York. They didn't endorse him like the conservatives did in Connecticut, but they ran a third party to allow him an easier path to the Senate, and that was a deal that D'Amato struck back in 1982 in New York. So, it seems like a long, long time ago when we had people like that, but it really wasn't that long ago. I feel like when I worked there, which was 15 years ago, people were actually making deals. We made deals with McCain all the time when I worked for Senator Schumer. We made deals across the aisle all the time. Now it seems nobody wants to do that because they are afraid of their base. And that's one of the times where that started. It happens on the right, too. Lisa Murkowski in Alaska. Others, they go out and they run as independents.
Run the alternate history for me.
But he was a great guy. I went to a Yankee game with him one night.
Okay, there you go.
And really enjoyed chatting with him back in my early Senate aide days.
Jump ball, whoever wants this. Joe Lieberman, run the alternate history for me. John McCain picks Joe Lieberman as his running mate in 2000. What happens, Tiff? What do you think?
Look, what I will say about...
She doesn't want it, folks. She doesn't want it.
I think it's important to honor him because I look at him...
She doesn't want to say they still lose because nobody votes for vice president, which is my line.
No, they do. But, he was the epitome of a man that wanted the best for this country.
Yes.
And he was able to put partisan politics aside, and I think D.C. could learn a few lessons from that.
Amisha, what do you say?
No, I think that's 100% true. He is somebody who obviously switched parties, was pushed out in large part by the Democrats, but he's somebody whose legacy, I think, is remembered across multiple political spectrums. There are very few people who have bad things to say about Joe Lieberman.
Right.
And I think that speaks to the type of man that he was and the type of outreach he was able to do to people across this country, regardless of their political stripe.
Absolutely would have lost in 2008.
Okay.
Well,
use your own adventure.
You never know.
No, I know.
Use your own adventure. Okay, all right. Now, onto the growing rift between President Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli prime minister is defending his decision not to send a high-level delegation to Washington. That followed the U.S. abstaining from a vote on the UN Security Council for a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza.
My decision not to send the delegation to Washington in the wake of that resolution was a message to Hamas. It was a message, first and foremost, to Hamas. Don't bet on this pressure. It's not going to work.
A U.S. official now telling NewsNation that Israel may send the delegation next week. The Biden administration is trying to convince Israel not to invade the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Meanwhile, a new Gallup poll shows a majority of Americans now disagree with the Israeli action in Gaza. And I want to hold on this poll for a second. What's significant about this to me is that 10-point swing over that period of time. I thought it would have been worse almost. I almost thought it would have been worse. 55% disapproval, 45%. That's up from 40. You want to be lower in this number.
Right.
Okay. So we're going to start with you, Amisha, this time, which is the president is in an extraordinarily difficult position here, right? His base, the same kind of voters who half a generation ago pushed Joe Lieberman out of the Democratic Party, right? Those voters are mad at Joe Biden over this. They are fuming at Joe Biden over this. But on the other hand, there are a bunch of other voters, right? Jewish American voters, moderate voters, persuadable voters. So 45% is not nothing. So this is a very difficult position for the president, right?
You're absolutely right. And I think that poll may have been skewed to a certain extent. I believe that it's slightly higher than that, particularly because younger people are typically left out of these types of polls in large number. And a lot of the drive against President Biden right now is taken on by young people. We're seeing it across college campuses. We're seeing it with Gen Z. We're seeing it all over TikTok. The other, caveat to that is that obviously people who have a Palestinian connection, I'm from Chicago. Cook County has the largest Palestinian population in the country. That speaks to the people who live there watching their people die in mass. And I would also argue that Muslim Americans are obviously going to have their feelings about this. However, President Biden is not taking this issue in a snapshot. Obviously, it's an election year, which makes this extremely difficult, but he can't turn his back on Israel. I don't think any president of the United States can. The way that he measures and handles this is going to have long-term implications. I don't think Netanyahu cares about the American election, first and foremost.
I think he does.
But he absolutely has shown that he is not going to slow down his assault on Palestinian people. This is beyond what happened a few months ago. This is beyond what the attacks that happened on those people. And I think that's frustrating.
Where are the Democrats having their convention this year?
Chicago.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't wait.
Yeah, and just as Amisha says, there's a large Palestinian American population in Chicago. Are we headed for real trouble for the Democrats in Chicago?
I expect there to be some protest, assuming that this conflict is still going on. There hasn't been some resolution by then. I think that Netanyahu got on the phone with Biden, said he was canceling this meeting. Biden said, "You're not canceling this meeting." He goes, "I'm rescheduling the meeting." I'm pretty sure that's how it went down.
Rescheduling. Okay, you Republicans are going to get your turn in the middle here in a second. But one of the key Democrats pushing President Biden to change policy and end the U.S. support for Israel's war with Hamas is former Michigan Congressman Andy Levin. He joins us right now. Mr. Levin, thank you for being with us today. Okay, here's a question. How concerned do you think Joe Biden really ought to be? Michigan is right up there. It's the second or third most important swing state. How concerned should Joe Biden really be about this?
Chris, whichever swing state you end up losing turns out to be the most important.
Fair.
That's how you judge it. And Joe Biden, I can't do an electoral college arithmetic without Joe Biden winning Michigan and have him win the presidency. And I need him to win the presidency. He must be reelected. So I think we have to be very concerned about this. One of your panelists was hitting it quite squarely. Yes, this is Arab Americans. And even though Cook County has the most Palestinians, Michigan is the most densely Arab American state by far. And we have a lot of Muslims here. We have a lot of young people. Of the 100,000 people who voted uncommitted here in the primary on February 27th, you saw big increases in uncommitted on college campuses in Ann Arbor, where University of Michigan is, in East Lansing, where State is. And we can't win without them.
To be a quibbler because it is by nature. President Biden didn't do that much worse than Barack Obama did in Michigan in 2012 against undeclared. It was just a statistically insignificant couple of points. And it's not like Donald Trump, who celebrated his Super Tuesday victory by announcing, my message to Israel, finish the job, is going to draw a lot of those voters over. Right. Is there maybe a little hyperventilation going on here in the political class about the dangers to Biden? No. And I mean, the danger isn't at all that these folks will go vote for Donald Trump, for God's sakes. The danger is just that they'll stay home, that maybe some might vote for a third party, but they'll stay home. And that would be fatal for Democrats winning here in November. Joe Biden can do this. Otherwise, things are going very well. I'm so proud of what we accomplished in the last Congress, and the fruits of that are landing more and more in communities all across this country, certainly in Michigan, where we have a lot of hydrogen and battery plants and other things, being built right now, and a lot of great jobs coming with them. Great collective bargaining wins last year, raising wages for union members and non-union workers whose bosses raised wages as well. So there's a lot going well here for Joe Biden, but it's complicated to win the presidency, Chris. I have to jump in just because we have to go, number one. And number two, I can feel the brainwaves of the Republican panelists burning a hole in the side of my head while you're talking. And what they're saying is Hamas can have a ceasefire anytime it wants if it releases the hostage. Which includes still, I think, 6 Americans. Is the pressure on Israel undue? Do we have an asymmetry in pressure here? Chris, Netanyahu's strategy here has been the opposite of the effective strategy to win the release of the hostages. I am so committed to seeing every hostage released safely. Sadly, while he's been prosecuting this horrible war, quite a few hostages have died, including in friendly fire, as we know, or whatever you call it, when there was that sad clash in a tunnel or something. And, we must get the hostages released. And we've got to end this carnage and destruction in Gaza. This is not doing Israel any good. And there's no such thing as eliminating Hamas or, killing every last fighter. They don't have
a serious.
Congressman, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've got to leave it there. Andy Levin, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. All right. Go ahead, say Republicans. Do your thing.
I agree with some policymakers that this potentially can embolden Hamas as well. And why is it not a number one priority to get Americans back? Mm-hmm. And let's not forget that there was a ceasefire on October 6th, and Hamas broke that with their barbaric, awful invasion of Israel. And I think this whole thing, it makes Joe Biden look weak. He will lose this presidency because he looks weak and he's listening and being driven by the far left side of his staff.
Mick, how much can one allow the political considerations that our Democratic friends laid out and that he laid out? How much can a White House really factor those into decision making before you cross the line into just being
a lot? I mean,
a lot.
I mean, this is a political decision. It absolutely is. It started as something else. In fact, you and I talked early on in the engagement between Israel and Gaza how surprised we were at how assertive Biden was in supporting.
Yeah, it was
Netanyahu.
really remarkable.
And all the reasons that he was doing that still exist today. So if he changes policy, you have to think there's a great deal of political pressure. But to my former colleague, I always sort of cringe when I hear my good friend Chris Hahn tell me what he thinks Republicans should do.
Right. Yes.
And he cringes when I say what I think Democrats should do. And when Americans say that
sometimes you're right,
that the Israeli government is doing something that's bad for Israel, that's sort of when I sit back and go, you know what? They probably know how to run their country better than we do.
Okay, now the latest on the deadly collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. The remains of 2 victims have been recovered and identified, authorities say. Joining us now is NewsNation Washington correspondent Kelly Meyer. She has the latest on the White House response. Kelly?
Yeah, hey there, Chris. Well, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was fielding several questions from reporters when we were there inside the White House briefing room earlier this afternoon. And several of the questions he really just didn't have the answer to, including how did something like this happen? When will the port be reopened? And when will this bridge be rebuilt? He says when it comes to whether or not this could have been avoided, that's being left to the investigation by the NTSB. But he said it's being debated right now whether any design feature to that bridge could have stopped this collision. And he says it really seems unlikely. Here's more from Secretary Buttigieg earlier today. Take a listen.
We still don't fully know the condition of the portions of the bridge that are still standing or of infrastructure that is below the surface of the water. So rebuilding will not be quick or easy or cheap, but we will get it done.
And speaking of not being cheap, the president was saying that the federal government will foot the bill for the entire cost of that bridge to be rebuilt. And Secretary Buttigieg was asked today whether the shipping company will be held accountable. And he says if an investigation finds them responsible, they will be held accountable here. But he says the president didn't want to wait for that process to work out and basically said that they are going to use emergency federal funds to get this bridge rebuilt as soon as humanly possible. Chris.
Kelly Meyer, you are the best. Thank you so much. We'll see you back here soon. Okay, now we got to take the ping pong ball over to the Democratic side for a second because I want to know. Okay, Maryland's governor. Now, we throw around the term rising star a lot. We throw around this term. This is a badly abused term. But if anybody meets the definition of rising star, right, it's got to be Wes Moore. Right? He is popular. He is a little bit unconventional. He sometimes ruffles feathers on the far left, and he does this stuff. So when you have a disaster in your state, when you have a catastrophe happen in your state, and all of the national lens comes right on you, we'll start with Han. We'll start with you. How's Wes Moore handling?
I think so far so good. Look, it's a moment to lead, right?
Yeah.
They're very few and far between where everybody's got to rally around the same person, left or right. They all want their bridge back. So he has this opportunity now. It's fraught with peril because a lot of this is going to be outside of his control. He's going to be relying on the Army Corps of Engineers. He's going to be relying on federal funding. He's going to be relying maybe on Congress acting, which is always hard to rely on. But I would say so far so good for Wes Moore. I do think he is a rising star in the Democratic Party. He's very young. I mean, I think he's like, I don't even think he's 40.
You can see him right there on screen. And he is dynamic. He is young.
Yep.
He is African-American man. He is, you can see how this looks like maybe the future of the Democratic Party. But Amisha, here's what else we know. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. And today I was thinking about, there's a couple of stories that came to mind. So we saw Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. I-95 collapse. Josh Shapiro, he fights through. He says, that's not good enough. We're going to get the bridge reopened. And that's been a part of Josh Shapiro's, speaking of rising stars, getting to this place where national Democrats say, hey, because what you have to do is you have to get people like you two to start nodding your heads and saying, oh, I think that guy's pretty good. I think that guy's pretty important. And Josh Shapiro did that. Or you could have what happened to Kathleen Blanco, who was the governor of Louisiana during Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah.
And her career, whatever direction her star was going, that was it for Kathleen Blanco. So you can have the good moment where it's working, or you can have the bad moment. Wes Moore seems like he knows what he's doing. Are you impressed?
Absolutely. And to be fair, he was on the short list for the next presidential election even before this. I think that he recognizes that not only is America watching, the world is watching. This was an event that I think everybody saw, and the international networks were covering it as well. He is being very smart and strategic about how he talks to the people, first and foremost, putting lives first, as well as those who, are going to have severe economic changes due to this. But I also think that they are poised in some ways, at least because of some of the changes they had to make during the pandemic. And I think that for him, because he has a direct line to the White House, because he has a direct line to Pete Buttigieg, because he has a direct line to infrastructure and development, and because he's somebody who has military experience, there is a lot of understanding here of what he has to do on the ground to rally people and get them ready.
When we start doing After Dark, when we do The Hill After Dark, Mick Mulvaney will tell us how they make up all of those quarter zips, and everybody gets their official gear with their name on it, because I think that's what everybo's just in it for, is the cool jackets. Okay.
You want one? I can get you.
I mean, I need one. Just in case this show's a disaster, I'm going to need something. Okay, coming up, fear and loathing in Washington, D.C. We're about to see a rematch between President Biden and former President Trump, but which candidate stokes more deeper emotion from voters? I will break down the numbers. Plus, you're fired. NBC drops former RNC chairwoman Ronna Romney McDaniel in less than 1 week. That's not even a full Scaramucci. Was the decision about silencing outrage at the network? And Lego lineup. A quirky police idea in California goes viral, but the toy maker is not laughing. Harumph. The debate over using Lego heads to protect a suspect's identity we'll discuss when The Hill on NewsNation returns. Well, look, it's me.
Look at that.
Look at that. It's me. Welcome back. As the weather starts to warm up, it's time to take a temperature check of how Americans are feeling about their important choice for the Oval Office this November. And there's no better way to do that than with brand spanking new numbers. So let's break it down, shall we? Okay, here's your first big number from Caleb's magical polling box. What do you got? Are you excited about another 4 years of Joe Biden? Only 40% of Democrats say that they're excited about another 4 years of Joe Biden. Okay, that's not super. How does it compare to Donald Trump, though? That's a great question. Whoa, okay. 54% of Republicans say they're very excited compared to Joe Biden. Now, here's the thing, America. We knew that. We've known that for a long time, that Donald Trump has a big enthusiasm gap among base supporters to Joe Biden. That was true in 2020. It's true now. It will always be true. It's just a fact of life that Joe Biden, no offense to the Delaware Blue Hens, no offense to anybody else, is not the kind of political figure that gets people excited. No, that's just true. And yet Joe Biden won a decisive victory over Donald Trump in 2020. But that number still seems pretty low. But look at here. See here. How about this? Are you fearful? So this poll is primo. This is definitely primo stuff. This is from the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago. There you go. They asked, this is asking the other side. So the NORC asked Republicans, are you afraid of another 4 years of Joe Biden? And half of Republicans, 49% of Republicans said that they were. But, dun, 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 look at the other side of this graphic when it pops up. Oh, 66% of Democrats said that they were very fearful of a Donald Trump return to power. Okay, so this is very useful. This is very useful because Donald Trump is a great motivator of votes, both for him and against him. And as we go through this election year, you're going to see a lot of polls that talk about the enthusiasm gap. But this poll, and the reason I wanted to share it with you today, is that this is the inverse enthusiasm gap. This is a measure. This is the first one of these that I've really seen that sets it up as well as this from such a good quality poll, which is, what's the inverse enthusiasm gap? Trump is going to continue to have the enthusiasm gap in his favor against Biden. But this inverse enthusiasm gap, I promise we will track throughout the year, throughout the election year, and we're going to keep track of it because this is, you've heard me say it before, I'll say it again, it's like a Mickey Mouse balloon. You squeeze one ear, you push it down, what happens? The other ear gets bigger. So that's the inverse enthusiasm
When's
gap.
the last time you squeeze a Mickey Mouse balloon?
You don't know what I do with my free time, Nick Mulvaney. You don't know how I get down. You don't need to judge me. All right, in the break, Nick, we were talking about how, Biden's number's low, but it probably wasn't that much higher in 2020, right?
No one, people get upset when I say this because they think I'm election denying, and I'm not. But no one voted for Joe Biden.
I didn't know it was a vote.
People voted for Donald Trump or against Donald Trump. And I think that's going to be the case. If it's the case this year, again, Trump can lose. Here's how I break it down for Donald Trump. If he can make this a binary choice between him and Joe Biden, he will win. If it becomes a referendum on him, he could well lose.
Are either of you two Republicans very afraid of Joe Biden spending 4 years?
I am afraid. I mean, look at where we're at right now. Look at our border. Look at our standing on the world stage. I mean, the failed departure in Afghanistan emboldened the evils of this world. We are not providing peace.
You Democrats are afraid of, would you say you're afraid of Donald Trump?
So I am worried.
I mean, afraid?
Afraid?
I'm annoyed. I'd be annoyed by it. Look, I have a theory.
We have to go, so just quickly.
Quick. Okay, here's the deal. Sometime around October 5th, you're going to start to see Trump's numbers plummet. It's going to be like Carter, Reagan, 80.
But
they were
reversed.
reversed.
Okay,
we're very tight until the end.
We've got a bold call from Hahn. He's calling for a reverse 1980. Yeah. Okay, there's still much more ahead on the Hill. Make America pray. Again, that's what Donald Trump is saying. The former president is now selling Bibles for $60. Is he broke, or is he trying to bring back religion, or some combination of those things with Lee Greenwood? And Obama to the rescue. The former president tries to drum up support for his former vice president. But does Biden need his old boss to save his presidential campaign? We will discuss all that and more when The Hill returns. Welcome back. Now, you've heard about this, the backlash over at NBC. Former Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna Romney McDaniel fired a week after the network hired her to bring what was being called a fresh, different perspective to the network. MSNBC's primetime hosts, including Rachel Maddow, spoke out on air against the network's decision to hire McDaniel, but then praised the network's decision to capitulate and fire her.
The fact that Ms. McDaniel is on the payroll at NBC News, to me, that is inexplicable. This was a really specific case because of Ms. McDaniel's and her involvement in the election interference stuff. And I'm grateful that our leadership was willing to do the bold, strong, resilient thing.
Now, I should point out, no one actually cares what happens in the TV news business, and this is a lot of pot boiling because it's us, and we're talking about ourselves, and I stipulate that we're the worst. But
not this network. It's
just
us in general,
as an industry, as a group of people, we're the worst,
and
I stipulate it for the record. But it is fascinating, and this is an opportunity for me to say something that is important to me. I've been in this business for a long time, and what I have learned is this. There are good contributors, and there are not good contributors.
Right.
Now, I think it was just the pits, the way that they treated Ronna Romney McDaniel. That was just, they hire her, they humiliate her, I mean, she gets to keep some money, which is nice, but it's, that was the pits. And also they let the inmates run the asylum, right? I stipulate all that. But here's what I know. Would that they could all be Hans. Would that they all could be Mulvaney's, the contributors who are on this set right now. Because here's why. You know what you hire a contributor for? Their honest opinion.
Right.
and real perspective
Right.
about somebody. And what Mick does, and I've actually gotten to use you talking about media in other places about what's the right way to do contributors. The right way to do contributors is look at this person right here who tells the truth. He has real experience. He has real knowledge.
Right.
But he tells the truth as he sees it. He's never been a shill, and he has real experience. There, I said it. And you guys don't even get to talk about it. Okay. Now,
we had a lot to say.
No, I know.
Let him talk more.
I know.
All right. Because I am a contributor.
All right, you all
I want to
behave.
contribute.
You all behave. Now, did you see this? President Trump selling $60 Bibles during Holy
you're
Week.
gonna ask me to visit Bibles.
All right,
We
listen,
love them.
listen, behave. Listen to this.
Religion and Christianity are the biggest things missing from this country, and I truly believe that we need to bring them back, and we have to bring them back fast.
This comes as 80% of Americans say religion is losing its influence, and 49% of Americans say that's a bad thing. Okay, Han, I cut you off before on contributing on contributors. Have a freebie. This is a freebie.
I mean, religion and Christianity is the biggest things missing from his life, perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
But how many $60 Bibles do you need to sell to pay a $157 million bond? I want to know. The guy's selling everything. Bibles, I think it's a little crass, if you ask me, that he's putting his name on a Bible. Who is he, King James?
No,
Even better.
I agree with that. This is a very weird trajectory, especially, during Holy Week. Easter is coming up. It's a strange place to go. And even according to that poll, we know that, I don't think that America's religiosity should be determined by their church-going ability and whether they choose to go. Okay. People have, for the past 2 decades, moved more towards being faith-based than actually showing up in church. We've seen church attendance dwindle with various age groups over time for a while now. And I think that in large part, they're judging Americans' religiosity based on church presence, and a lot of people, quite frankly, don't trust that structure anymore.
Hold on. Nick, what's going on with 2 Corinthians here?
All of that being said, a lot of the groups that have come out, Christian groups that have come out and have attacked him, are really left-leaning groups.
Okay.
There was this faith-based America, something that is. These are all folks who are
but what's he doing?
Lefties. Listen, I actually have a bigger problem with him selling shoes than he does with selling the Bible.
Okay.
But there are folks who would be attacking him even if he were giving them away for free. This is what Trump does, right?
Mick, at least he wears shoes. He's never read the Bible.
Okay. Would you buy a Trump Bible?
She doesn't need to. She already has.
She already has a Bible.
That's right.
Yes, I already have a Bible, but
are you paying him as your spokesman here? No.
No, it's also not a good luck charm to be commercialized. But at the end of the day, if someone gets the Bible in their hands, it's not a bad thing.
What's wrong with it?
They're not getting it. They're paying $60 for it. This isn't the guys who knock on the door and pass you a Bible.
Best-selling book in the world.
Oh, other than Art of the Deal.
It's a strange business model because the Gideons will give it to you for free.
Yeah, I mean,
it's true.
I got one in my hotel right now.
But it won't have all the extra parts. All right, coming up, danger or distraction? Is RFK Jr. a bigger threat to President Biden than Trump? We'll discuss after the break. Obama, the former president, is back at work, making regular calls with Biden and Chief of Staff Jeff Zients, and even headlining an upcoming campaign fundraiser with Bill Clinton. So, Mick Mulvaney, why is Obama doing this now, and is it a good move politically?
Because they're afraid he's going to lose, and yes, but that's not the angle that when I see this, that's not what jumps out at me.
Okay.
I'm putting myself in Jeff Zients' role.
Oh, okay.
I'm the chief of staff, the phone rings, and it's the former president of the United States. You have to take the call.
In your case, it's George W. Bush.
Exactly. And George Bush and Barack Obama and Donald Trump probably get along just a little bit worse than Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Keep in mind what Biden said, Obama said famously about Biden: don't underestimate his ability to things up, okay?
Yes.
There's not a lot of love lost between these two guys.
Correct.
But you have to take the call, and you have to walk down the hallway and go to the President of the United States. By the way, Barack Obama just called me, and XYZ.
Is there an outshining factor here, too, which is that Barack Obama is very popular and very well thought of nationally now, much like George W. Bush. When they're out of office, they're a lot more appealing than when they're in. Mm-hmm. Is there a possibility that this will actually make Democrats miss Obama, not like Biden more?
I don't think if you're a Democrat, having Barack Obama on your side is not going to hurt. That's not. This is a smart move politically. It's just a really difficult pill to swallow.
Can they get along? Okay. Yeah. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced his running mate yesterday, Nicole Shanahan, and former President Donald Trump is already out with his thoughts. Trump going on Truth Social in the middle of the night, calling RFK Jr. the most radical left candidate in the race by far, adding his new running mate is even more liberal, before finally coming to the conclusion that he is, quote, crooked Joe Biden's political opponent, not mine. I love that he is running. Mick, the Shanahan pick said to me,
they need money.
Well, it said they need money. This is the ex-wife of one of the founders of Google. But this is not a play for libertarian voters, right? She's a environmental activist. She's left. This is not a play to get the libertarian nomination. This is a play to the left, right?
We had the head of the Libertarian Party on the show yesterday, and the first thing she mentioned was that she really didn't like this pick as they were looking at whether or not Robert F. Kennedy would go on the Libertarian ticket. So,
why do they need him on the Libertarian ticket?
Because they have the ballot access that Robert Kennedy forgot to get. And that's what you have to do.
It's a money pick. That's it. Yeah. Plain and simple.
Well,
and by the way, good pick, because she brings billions of dollars.
It's also a pick because everybody else he asked said no. Like the list was so long.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers did not want to give up his NFL contract to do it.
Well, let's hope he gets more than 3 snaps for the Jets this year. Aaron Rodgers.
Are you a Jets fan?
I'm a Giants fan. The Jets are my backup
Here's
team.
my test for all of you. Okay, a week from now, hopefully we'll be on the show together. A week from now, I want to see if you can remember the vice presidential candidate's name for Robert F. Kennedy.
We won't.
No,
I'm just telling you right now.
I
and
might
nobody in
not
America will either.
But I think the verdict's still out, and I think you need to give her time because she's young, she's compelling, she's the epitome of the American dream.
I'm going to remind you what I said earlier.
For
vice president.
So just to decode this,
nobody cares.
Audience, just to decode this a little bit, this is Republican has good feelings about this pick now because this means that she is traveling leftward and she is more of a threat to Joe Biden.
Yes.
I think if anything, nobody votes for vice president.
But
I do
this
think
vice
that
president comes with bags of cash, which makes her very good.
Trump's VP pick will likely be a woman, and it will likely be a younger woman as well.
So do you all?
Everybody's younger than Trump.
Yes.
Well, factual.
Do you all agree with that we're likely to have all female running mates this cycle?
No, I don't either.
You don't? You think Trump picks a dude?
Ben Carson.
You think it's Ben Carson?
The only
Gifted
person,
hands.
because Trump will not be able to run for president again, and he will not want a vice president. He's immedially running.
I got to tell you,
you say it's a dude.
If he chooses Ben Carson, he should get his head examined. I know a guy who could do that. Ben Carson, he's got gifted.
Hey, Hans got jokes, but don't you think that a woman would be helpful for Trump?
I think he picks a woman. I do. I think he needs that softer side. He needs to pull in the woman vote, the suburban woman vote.
Is it you? Kristi Noem's antennae just went up somewhere. Who said that? Okay.
Dakota. Kristi Noem's on the list.
All right. Did you see this? A California police department is using Lego images to cover the faces of arrested suspects. But now Lego is asking the agency to stop. The Murrieta Police Department has been altering photos of suspects to work around a state law that prohibits law enforcement from sharing certain mugshots. In a shared Instagram post, the department says they take pride in the transparency with the community, but also honors everyone's rights as protected and afforded by law, even suspects. Okay, panel question. What should they put? What should they replace that with? If they're not going to do Lego heads of Misha, what should they use?
They could just use, because I feel like Americans are obsessed with aliens. They could just use little aliens.
Oh, alien heads would be good.
Chris,
what
if I could get a happy looking one, I'd use those for my headshot instead of what I got right now.
Well, you kind of have a little bit of the Lego guy
good,
vibe.
and then I wouldn't have to get it redone every couple of years.
Yeah, without the snap-on.
Right.
What would you?
I say let's just get the criminals off the street and not worry about Lego heads.
No, you're no fun.
Come on.
But I do like Legos, and I love that Legos are being promoted.
Right. Let me see if I can pick up on the humor side from my humorless Republican friend.
Yes.
I want his face.
Yes.
His face on all of the shots.
It'd be great.
Fantastic. The aggressive progressive.
I'll be right there back to where I was when I fought with Giuliani.
Panel. And look at this. We've come together in agreement. We've come together. Here we are at the end of our time together. We've come together that it's Chris Mon is the answer.
I'll take the Lego. They could use me.
Ladies, gentlemen, thank you. Ladies, thank you for putting up with
Chris.
Gentlemen.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. Okay, coming up. She endorsed Governor Ron DeSantis in the GOP presidential primary, but now this Congresswoman's decision isn't sitting well with, guess who? Donald Trump. So what's the former president doing about it? I'll discuss that with Leland Vittert, the host of On Balance, next.
On NewsNation, RFK Jr. picks his running mate. He takes your calls live with Chris. Plus, the one and only Bill O'Reilly joins Chris to break down the day's biggest headlines. Tonight on Cuomo at 8/7 Central, only on NewsNation.
Welcome back. Former President Donald Trump is throwing down the gauntlet against a Republican lawmaker in Florida. Congresswoman Laurel Lee, who endorsed, Ron DeSantis over Trump last year. Trump writing on his social media site, any great MAGA Republicans looking to run against Laurel Lee in Florida's 15th congressional district? If so, please step forward. ! Representative Lee eventually endorsed Trump after DeSantis dropped out, but it looks like that wasn't enough for the former president. Leland Vittert, my friend, your friend, recent Chesapeake Bay enthusiast, and the host of On Balance joins me now. Okay, is this the beginning of a replay of 2022 where Donald Trump score settling and opinions inside the Republican Party hurt their ability to win races?
What's the saying? If you seek revenge, dig two graves.
Oh, namaste. That is very good. That's
all right,
I'm
done. My work here is done. Look, it makes sense. You said earlier when you were teasing this segment, it said Republican rep bullied over endorsement.
Yeah. That's what Alex Massey said.
So, but politics is a full contact sport.
Right.
Isn't that just sort of par for the course right now? Isn't this what happens? Democrats, Republicans, everybody?
Yeah, I hear you, but look, Thomas Massey, not Alex Massey, sorry, Kentucky. But the point here is, if you can't reasonably disagree in your own party, and Joe Lieberman, you were acknowledging Joe Lieberman's passing today, it's okay to sometimes have disagreement, right? And if you go punish people for disagreeing with you or wanting something different, that's not good.